always thought betrayal would feel like a blade, sharp, fast, unmistakable. Turns out, it feels more like silence, a silence so thick you start to question your own pulse. If you've ever opened your heart to someone who smiled while twisting the truth, if you've ever wondered what else they might be hiding just beneath the surface, stay with me. You're not alone in that feeling, because for me, it started with numbers, not fists, not screams, just digits on a screen, and a vanishing act. I'm Elyse Varnell. I'm 32. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I run a small UX consultancy out of a co-working space downtown. Nothing fancy, just enough to pay the rent and keep my plants alive. But back then, I wasn't designing anything. I was unraveling. It was a Tuesday. Rain had settled into the city like it always does. Quiet, misty, intrusive. I was in line at a local bakery when I pulled up my banking app to pay. And that's when the world tilted. The screen loaded. Balance, $0 savings, 0 to 11, no alerts, no explanation, just gone. $50,000. My entire savings. Years of freelancing, skipped vacations, rent paid in stress, just disappeared. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I laughed, out loud actually. The woman behind me must have thought I was nuts, but the laughter died fast. I refreshed the screen, again. Then I saw it, a single-line item buried in the transaction history. Transfer, $49,281,087, completed. No recipient listed. My throat closed. I barely remember the walk back to my apartment. I don't even remember unlocking the door, but I do remember sitting on the floor, back against the kitchen cabinet, my laptop balanced on my knees as I scrolled through months of statements. Nothing made sense, until it did. A withdrawal made 4 days ago, authorized, with my credentials. But I didn't do it. I called the bank. They confirmed it. Someone had access, and the IP matched a device I used at my parents' house. I froze. I hadn't even told them I had savings. That was the point. That money was my safety net, my secret someday fund. That night, I drove to my parents' house. The lights were on, as always. The same warm glow pouring from their picture-perfect porch. And yet, something about it felt colder than the rain outside. Mom opened the door, a glass of wine in one hand. She wore her usual silk robe and that unreadable expression she's mastered over decades. "Darling," she smiled, "to what do we owe the pleasure?" I didn't even say hello. My voice shook as I asked, "Did you access my bank account?" She tilted her head, sipped her wine, then smiled wider. "You're imagining things, sweetheart." Just like that. Like I'd asked if she moved the throw pillows. "No, Mom, I'm not. Someone took everything. From your IP, from your house, using my login." She didn't flinch. "You've always had an overactive imagination," she said, walking back into the kitchen like I was a child mid-tantrum. "Maybe you spent it and forgot." I stood there, cold air soaking through my sleeves. Then Dad walked in, still in his suit, briefcase in hand. I looked at him, pleading maybe. I don't know. "She emptied my account," I whispered. "Dad, say something." He didn't even meet my eyes, just set down his keys, loosened his tie. "Stop overreacting, Elyse," he muttered. "If your mother says she didn't do it," he trailed off. That's the thing about my dad. He never finishes anything. Not arguments, not apologies, not guilt. And then, the ping. A soft ding from my phone. New email, no subject, no sender. Just one line of preview text visible. "If you want the truth, start looking at your family's legacy." My blood ran cold. I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. Mom was watching me, her smile tight now. Too tight. I excused myself, drove home. The windshield wipers squeaked against mist as my mind spun. Legacy? What truth? That night, I lay in bed, phone gripped in both hands, staring at that email. Still unopened, because part of me wasn't ready. What if opening it meant confirming that everything I feared was real? That the people who raised me weren't just flawed, they were predators, and I was the prey who never saw the trap, until it was too late. The email sat unopened for hours, like it could explode. I left my phone face down on the nightstand and just watched the ceiling. $50,000. Vanished. And all I had were questions and a hollow silence. By morning, the air in my apartment had changed. It smelled of dust and disuse. The coffee grounds I forgot to toss were clumped in the filter, stale. My fingers shook as I poured water into the kettle, not from caffeine withdrawal, but from the weight of knowing. Knowing something wasn't right. I opened the email. No greeting, no name, just, "She's been planning this longer than you think. Check the transfers from 2017. I blinked. 2017? That was the year I graduated. The year I let Mom help me set up my first account. Her voice syrupy sweet as she said, "Better to keep it all under one roof, darling. Makes taxes easier." I hadn't thought much of it then. I was still raw from college debt, thrilled to land my first agency job. I'd trusted her. She'd even taken me to brunch to celebrate. French toast, mimosas, her diamond bracelet glinting in the sun like it knew something I didn't. I swallowed hard and sat down, opening my laptop. Digging through financial archives is like peeling wallpaper, slow, tedious, and reveals rot underneath. And there it was, a $12,000 reallocation to a holding account I didn't recognize. From my checking. The memo said, "Family budget adj," then another and another. Quiet, careful, never enough to notice unless you were hunting for it. Each one dated around milestones, my promotions, contract bonuses, like she was watching my joy and draining it in the background. My stomach twisted. I scrolled faster. A name popped up, Valamont Trust, then another, East River Holdings, Shells, empty names. But I recognized the last one, Marjorie E. Varnell, not Margot, Marjorie, her legal name, the one she never let anyone use. My chest went tight. I stood, suddenly dizzy, and braced myself against the table. The wood felt sticky beneath my palms. My breath came shallow, not from shock anymore, but rage. Slow, creeping, pulsing rage. I thought back to childhood, how she'd picked my clothes until I was 14, blush tones, soft collars, always demure. How she once cried when I told her I wanted to study computer science instead of business. I'd compromised, I always had. For her smile, her approval, that glint of pride in her eyes that always came with a condition. I thought that was love. But now, I wasn't so sure. I opened a dusty drawer, yanked out the old tax folder she helped me organize. Pages crinkled under my fingers. And right there, in my 2019 return, buried on the 4th page, an offshore account disclosure form, pre-checked, signed electronically, my signature, except it wasn't mine. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper. She'd forged me. Years ago. This wasn't a mistake. This was orchestrated. I dropped the papers and backed away like they'd burned me. And then, my phone buzzed. Mom. The screen glowed her name, serene and cold as ever. I didn't answer. I couldn't hear her voice. Not yet. But her voicemail hit seconds later, her tone lilting like it was Sunday brunch. "Elyse, darling, just checking in. I hope you're not letting your little tech obsessions distract you again. Call me back when you've had a good sleep and calm down." Calmed down? I laughed, sharp and bitter. She always had a way of making reality bend around her voice, like her words were facts and mine were just noise. I sat on the floor, hugging my knees, trying to slow my breathing. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining this. And yet, her voice wormed its way into my head. "It's for your own good." That's what she used to say when she canceled sleepovers last minute, or rewrote my college essays. "Because your grammar's a little off, sweetie." I used to believe it. Now it made my skin crawl. That night I dreamed of a hallway, long and sterile, lined with closed doors. One of them had my name etched on it in gold. I opened it. Inside was a doll version of me, sitting stiff on a velvet chair, blank-eyed, mouth stitched shut. I woke up sweating. By morning I needed answers, more than what the paper trail could offer. I drove across town to my dad's law office. It was early. Rain smeared the windshield, the wipers ticking in a hypnotic rhythm. He looked surprised to see me. "Elyse," he said, stepping into the lobby. "Everything okay?" I held up the papers. "These look familiar?" His smile faltered. He led me to his office, shut the door, but didn't sit, just stared out the window like he could find an excuse in the fog. "She's been managing those funds for years," he said finally. "She said it was secure." "You knew?" My voice cracked. He turned then, face pale. "I thought it was for the family." I laughed, loud, bitter, shaking. For the family? I whispered. That was my future, my life. She promised it would be temporary. I looked at him, really looked. His tie was crooked. His hands trembled slightly at his sides. She used me, I said, and you let her. He opened his mouth, closed it again. That's when I saw the shift, the guilt. The silence wasn't ignorance, it was complicity. And in that moment, something inside me broke loose. Not panic, not sadness, resolve. He tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. Don't, I said, just don't. I left without another word. Rain slammed the pavement outside, harder now, almost violent. Back home, I opened my laptop again, clicked through files, opened an old encrypted drive I hadn't touched since college. Inside was something I hadn't thought about in years, a prototype I built during my final semester, a rudimentary tracking app, rough, basic. But maybe it was enough to start again. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. If they were willing to lie for years, what else had they buried? And just how far would they go to keep it hidden? The code was old, sloppy in places, but it was mine. I sat cross-legged on the floor, bathed in the bluish light of my laptop screen. Outside, the Portland sky had dimmed to its usual gray, low clouds rolling past like slow-moving secrets. A single moth thudded gently against the window pane. I hadn't eaten in nearly a day. I couldn't. My stomach had folded in on itself, tight with adrenaline and disbelief. The app I'd built in college was basic, just a shell of what I needed. But it could sniff out account activity, trace routing paths, and scrape metadata from transaction logs. It was a start. I needed help. I needed someone who spoke this language better than I did. Someone who didn't think in bank statements or contracts, but in backdoors and loopholes. I found myself at a tech meetup that night, half out of desperation, half instinct. It was hosted in an industrial-style co-working space downtown, concrete floors, Edison bulbs, the kind of place where caffeine and ambition hang heavy in the air. I didn't belong. Everyone there wore hoodies or sarcastic t-shirts. They sipped yerba mate and argued about zero-day exploits and API integrations like they were discussing the weather. I hovered near the snack table, clutching a paper cup of something vaguely citrusy, scanning faces, waiting for a sign. That's when I saw him. He was hunched over a laptop, earbuds half in, scribbling something on a napkin with a pencil stub. His sweatshirt read, "I void warranties." That was enough. I walked up, nerves humming. "Sorry," I said. Do you know anything about tracing financial transactions? Offshore transfers?" He looked up, blinked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language, then smirked. "Who'd you piss off?" he asked. I hesitated. "My mom." He laughed, not cruel, more surprised. "Damn. All right, sit down." His name was Jasper Reed. Hair like he forgot it existed, nails bitten down to the quick. He didn't ask many questions, just nodded along as I laid out my story in bits and pieces, leaving out the crying and panic and everything that made me feel small. He pulled the laptop toward him, fingers dancing over the keys. "You built this?" he asked, opening my app. "Kind of. Years ago." He nodded, impressed. "Not bad, but we'll need to Frankenstein it a bit." "We?" He shrugged. "If someone stole my money, I'd want backup too." There was something disarming about him. No pity, no lecture, just focus. And for the first time in days, I felt less alone. We worked in a blur, shoving tables together, plugging into extra monitors, trading lines of code like secrets. Jasper's voice was low, muttering commands as he debugged scripts. He added encryption layers I didn't know existed, taught me how to scrub IP histories and parse blockchain leaks. At one point, he looked up and said, "You know, this isn't just about money, right?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" He leaned back. "Your mom didn't just rob you. She built an entire system around controlling you. The cash is just the tip." I nodded slowly. He was right. And yet, hearing it out loud made it harder to breathe. At 1:43 a.m., the app pinged. A match. One of the holding accounts, East River Holdings, had moved a lump sum last week, almost 50 grand, traced through 4 banks, routed to a company registered in Delaware. paper trail disguised under layers of corporate shells. But the email associated with the original transaction, varnelheaventmosaic.com. My mother's business address. My chest constricted. Jasper saw the look on my face. "She's bold," he muttered. "She's arrogant," I replied. I stood, needing air. The room had gotten too close, too warm. I stepped outside into the damp night. The street was slick from earlier rain. Streetlights buzzed, casting gold halos over the sidewalk. I gripped the railing, trying to steady the whirl inside me. Was I really doing this? Fighting back? A sudden thought surfaced, an old memory. I was 13. Sitting on the edge of Mom's bed, watching her clip diamond earrings into place. She was late for a gala. I told her I wanted to apply for a tech summer camp, one for girls who liked computers. She'd smiled through the mirror. "That's cute, sweetie, but you're not that kind of smart." That sentence had lived under my skin ever since. A quiet rot. Back inside, Jasper was packing up cables. "You should be careful," he said. "People don't build empires on lies without having ways to protect them." I paused. "What kind of ways?" He shrugged. "I've seen worse. Sometimes it's lawyers, sometimes shadows." I laughed, nervous. "She's just a wedding planner." His eyes met mine, steady. "No one's just anything, Elyse, especially not someone who steals from their own daughter." He wasn't wrong. We agreed to meet again the next night. I promised to bring more files. He'd work on creating a trace module, something that could map money movement over time. As I left the building, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message. I ignored it. 3 blocks later, I saw it. A black SUV, parked across from my building. Engine off. No lights. Just sitting there. Coincidence? Maybe. But as I fumbled with my keys, I glanced back. The driver's side window rolled up. Someone had been watching. I barely slept. Every creak outside my window felt loaded. Every shadow, a maybe. That SUV never moved, but by morning, it was gone. Like it had never been there. But I'd seen it. I knew what I saw. Paranoia? Maybe. But paranoia only comes after you've been betrayed by the people who taught you to trust. I needed to move, to dig deeper, to go somewhere I hadn't dared go since all this started. Home. The Varnell house sat on the edge of Westover Hills like it belonged there. White pillars, clean hedges, the kind of place realtors called timeless. But under the marble and curated charm, it had always felt more like a museum than a home. Silent, cold, preserved. I still had a key. The lock clicked open too easily, like the door had been waiting. I stepped inside, and the air was thick with lemon polish and dust. No one was home. Mom had a speaking gig in Seattle. Dad would be at the office. I had a window. I moved fast. Upstairs to Dad's office. He was meticulous, always had been. Every folder labeled, every pen capped. The only chaos came from me, and I hadn't touched this room in years. But the desk drawers were too neat, too curated, so I looked underneath. A faint click. My fingers brushed a loose panel in the bottom drawer, and there it was. A letter. Old. Yellowed around the edges. Sealed with burgundy wax, cracked like old paint. No address on the front. Just one word in block print. Margot. My heart stuttered. I sat down slowly, my thumb trembling against the edge. I peeled it open. The handwriting was jagged, rushed. Mail maybe. The truth will surface soon. I warned you not to tie her money to the legacy fund. If Elyse finds out, she'll never forgive you. And neither will I. I reread it 3 times. Legacy fund? I didn't even know what that meant. I scanned the rest of the letter, no signature, no date. Just that threat, that name, my name. So this wasn't new. She'd been warned, and she did it anyway. Suddenly the edges of everything felt sharp. The desk, the chair, my breath. I stood, holding the letter like it might vanish if I blinked. That's when I heard the front door. Footsteps. I froze. No time to think. I slid the letter into my coat pocket, backed out of the room. My footsteps were muffled against the hallway rug, my breath shallow as I slipped down the back stairs into the kitchen. I waited. And then I saw her. Not Mom. The housekeeper, Diane. She blinked, startled to see me. "Elyse, honey, what are you—" "Just grabbing something I left," I said quickly. "Old paperwork." Her eyes lingered on my coat. I knew she noticed how stiff I was, but she just nodded. "You okay, sweetheart?" I hesitated. then gave her the smile I learned from Mom. Tight, polite, hollow. Never better. I walked out before the lie could turn sour. Back at my apartment, I laid the letter on the counter and stared at it. My reflection in the microwave door looked foreign. Messy bun, pale skin, eyes ringed in sleepless shadow. I couldn't tell Jasper. Not yet. This letter felt personal, like it had more weight than code or IP traces, like it belonged to a past I didn't remember agreeing to. Legacy fund. What the hell was that? I pulled out a shoebox of old family documents, birth certificates, school records, brittle newspaper clippings, and there, wedged in the back, was a printout from 2010. Varnell Family Legacy Holdings, LLC. I scanned the list. Real estate, trusts, event venues, even a vineyard in Napa. But one name jumped out at me. E. Varnell, listed as a secondary beneficiary. Me. And the deposit date? Right after Grandpa's funeral. I remembered that trip, the flight to Baltimore. I'd been 15. Mom told me to stay in the hotel while she and Dad handled arrangements. I'd cried when I wasn't allowed at the gravesite. That night, I watched her from the hotel balcony, pacing in heels on a phone call. Her voice muffled, sharp. Then silence, then laughter. Not grief laughter. Not. Something about that memory made my skin crawl now. I picked up the letter again, my eyes drawn back to one phrase: tie her money to the legacy fund. They'd used me, not just my savings, but me, my name, my inheritance. I wasn't just collateral, I was the source, and I never even knew. That night, I couldn't sit still. I paced my apartment like a caged animal. Every drawer felt like it might hide another secret. Every reflection stared back like it knew more than I did. I called Dad. He didn't answer. I texted, "We need to talk, I found the letter." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. Around midnight I heard a sound, not outside, inside. A creak, near the hallway. I held my breath. Nothing. Then faint. The soft clink of metal, the front door. I crept forward, holding my breath. Nothing on the street. No footsteps, no retreating car. But taped to the outside of my door was a manila envelope. No label, no note. Inside were printouts, photos, bank statements, transfers, real estate deeds, all traced back to Margot Varnell. But the last photo stopped me cold. A man I didn't recognize, standing beside my mother, and under it, one word, typed in all caps: find him. The man in the photo looked vaguely familiar, but not in a comforting way. His smile was too wide. His hand rested just a little too confidently on my mother's shoulder. And something about the way he leaned into her made my stomach twist. I stared at that word again. Find him. That envelope had shown up at my door in the middle of the night. No return address, no explanation. Just documents that painted a story I hadn't asked for, but couldn't ignore. By morning, I'd memorized his face, every line, every detail. He wasn't part of my family's social circle, not from what I remembered. But Mom had always kept a world separate from me. Glossy galas, closed-door meetings, handshakes that smelled like power. And now I had to walk straight into it. Dinner was at 7:30 sharp. Mom's voice on the phone had been all sugar. "I just think it's time we had a little family clarity, darling." That word, clarity, carried the bite of a blade. I wore black, something simple, sleeveless. I didn't want to look fragile. I didn't want her to see the war happening under my skin. The house smelled like truffle risotto and citrus polish. Too clean, too careful. A stage. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, her lips cold. Dad stood behind her, barely making eye contact. His tie was crooked again, a nervous tic, or maybe just guilt. The dining room hadn't changed. Same white candles, same ivory china, same chilled silence dressed up in politeness. We sat. Mom lifted her wine glass and smiled. "To moving forward," she said. I didn't touch mine. Halfway through dinner, she placed her fork down with a clink. "I've been thinking," she said, "about your little tech hobby." I waited. She reached into a drawer built into the sideboard and pulled out a folder. A contract. "I had our lawyer draft a transfer form. If you're going to be building something with Jasper," she said his name like it was dirty, "we need to make sure the app is protected. Legally." I stared at the folder. Didn't touch it. She pushed it toward me with her fingertips, just a precaution, to avoid future confusion. I laughed. It startled even me. "This isn't about protection," I said. "You want to own it." She tilted her head, smile tight. "You always twist things. This is about family, about shielding us from public embarrassment." Dad cleared his throat. "Elyse, maybe just take a look." I turned to him slowly. "You let her steal from me, and now you want me to sign it over?" His shoulders twitched. His mouth opened, then closed. Coward. Mom leaned in, elbows on the table now. She was done pretending. "You're playing with fire, Elyse," she said. "Do you really think you're equipped to handle what this could become?" "I'm handling it now," I said. "You're spiraling," she snapped. And just like that, the mask cracked. Her eyes were sharp now. Her voice had dropped half an octave. "There's more at stake here than your little ego," she said. "This is about legacy, about control. And if you keep pushing What? You'll what?" I cut in. "Hire another lawyer? Send another envelope to my door in the dark?" Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. Then she sat back, composed again. "I don't know what you're talking about." The lie hung there between us. I reached for the contract. My hands were cold, but steady. I flipped through it quickly. 10 pages of legal jargon, non-competes, transfer of IP rights, revenue clauses that funneled everything back to Varnell Legacy Holdings. It was a trap, beautifully wrapped in family branding. But I signed it. I signed it anyway, because something in me knew this was her next move, and I wanted to see what came after it. Mom looked genuinely surprised. She folded the papers delicately and placed them in a leather portfolio. "Well," she said, "I'm glad we're finally being reasonable." I nodded once, then excused myself from the table, grabbed my coat, and left. In the car, I sat in the driveway for 10 full minutes, the pen still in my hand. The ink from my signature had barely dried. My breath fogged the window. My jaw ached from how hard I was clenching it. I wasn't giving up. I was buying time. The moment I got home, I texted Jasper. "Need to meet. She made a move." He responded instantly. "What kind?" "Legal, weaponized." I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying her expression when I said yes, the flicker in her eyes, the twitch of her mouth. She didn't expect compliance. She expected resistance. And that told me one thing. She needed that contract more than she let on. But what did she know that I didn't? Around 2 a.m., I pulled the envelope from the drawer again. The man in the photo. His face stared back at me like it had been waiting. Somewhere he was connected to all of this. Legacy Fund, the app, the pressure to sign. And if my gut was right, he wasn't finished yet. I used to think my father was harmless, soft-spoken, cautious, always in the background of Mom's spotlight. But silence. Silence is never neutral. And now, that silence screamed louder than anything he'd ever said. The morning after I signed the contract, I drove to his law office. I didn't call, I didn't plan, I just showed up. His secretary glanced up, startled. "He's in a meeting," she said, half rising from her desk. "He'll want to see me," I replied, already pushing open the frosted glass door. Dad stood by the window, phone to his ear, but he ended the call the moment he saw me. His tie was perfect today, his posture too straight, his eyes unreadable. "Elyse," he said carefully, "is everything okay?" I closed the door behind me. The latch clicked like a lock. "I found the letter," I said. He didn't move. "The one in your desk," I added. "The one addressed to Mom, about tying my money to the legacy fund." His shoulders lowered, barely, like a sigh trying not to escape. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said. "That's your concern?" I snapped. "That I saw it? Not that it exists?" He walked around his desk slowly, like he was buying time. "It was a long time ago," he said. "Things were complicated." My laugh cracked through the room. "Complicated? You helped her launder my inheritance." His jaw twitched. "I didn't help," he said. I didn't stop her." The room went still. That was it. That was the moment. The one that shattered the last illusion I had left. My father had known. All this time. "You stood there," I whispered, "and watched her take everything, and said nothing." His voice dropped, low and tired. "You don't understand what she's capable of." "Then tell me," I said, stepping forward. "Explain it. Make me understand why the man who taught me right from wrong watched my life get gutted like it was a legal inconvenience. He sank into his chair like the weight had finally gotten to him. She controls more than you know, he said. The trust, the partners, even the firm. Half the board owes her favors. I wanted to protect you. By staying quiet? He didn't answer. I paced the room, my fingers trailing along the bookshelf lined with fake accolades and bound legal volumes no one had opened in years. I used to think you were just spineless, I said, but now I think you're something worse. He looked up slowly. What's that? Complicit. He closed his eyes, and for the first time, I saw it. The guilt, the shame, the years of silence calcified into regret. I tried to fight her once, he murmured. You were in high school. She took a portion of the college fund, said it was for an investment opportunity. I told her it was wrong, that it was your future. His voice cracked. She said if I made noise, she'd dissolve the trust, move everything offshore, cut you out entirely, and she'd tell you it was my fault. I froze. Why would she do that? I asked. He looked at me with something between sorrow and fear. Because she knew you'd believe her. I wanted to scream, to rip the curtains from the windows, to flip his desk and break something, anything. Instead, I sat. I don't believe her anymore, I said. He nodded, slowly, like that realization alone cost him everything. Then his eyes shifted toward the bookshelf. I followed his gaze. There, tucked behind a legal digest, was a small safe. Matte black, no label, dustless. What's in there? I asked. He hesitated. Things I shouldn't have kept, he said. I stood. Open it. He rose, walked over, and keyed in the combination. 3 soft beeps. The door clicked open. Inside were folders, red, blue, yellow, each marked with initials and dates. Scanned statements, notarized forms, even audio tapes. He pulled one folder out and handed it to me. My name was on it. Inside, a notarized agreement transferring $100,000 from Grandpa's estate directly into East River Holdings. I stared at the signature line, her name, Margot Varnell, and next to it, a forged version of mine. I hadn't even turned 18. My hands shook. She planned this even before I graduated. He nodded. It was never just about the money. It was about control. There was a long pause, and then I asked him the question that had lived inside me for weeks. Do you still love her? He didn't answer, which was an answer. I took the folder and turned to go. As I opened the door, he said quietly, You're stronger than she ever expected. But be careful. She's losing control, and that makes her dangerous. I didn't turn back. In the elevator, I clutched the folder to my chest, the paper sharp against my skin. Outside, the wind had picked up. Clouds thickened, heavy with unshed rain. The kind of Portland sky that warned you something was coming. When I got home, I laid out the documents, one by one. Jasper would need these: proof, trail, leverage. But something else caught my eye, a number scribbled in the margin of one form. I searched it. It wasn't a phone number. It was a key code to a storage unit, registered under my mother's maiden name. The code to the storage unit was a 6-digit sequence, handwritten in the margin of a forged financial record. No label, no address, just numbers. But I knew exactly where it led. I'd passed that row of rental units 100 times, on Burnside, near the train tracks, tucked between an auto shop and a boarded-up dry cleaner. They looked like metal coffins, baking in the Portland drizzle. Unit 417. I waited until dusk. The air was damp, the asphalt slick with fresh rain. I wore gloves. Not because I thought anyone was watching, because I knew someone was. And I didn't need to leave breadcrumbs. The key code worked. Inside, it smelled of cold concrete, oil, and paper rot. A single bulb buzzed overhead, swinging just enough to cast long, shifting shadows. And there, stacked neatly on a metal shelf, were boxes, dozens of them, labeled in Mom's handwriting: Event Mosaic, Varnell Trust, Legacy Fund, and one box in thick red Sharpie, EV. I took that one. Back home, I peeled the lid off like I was disarming something. Inside, hard drives, flash drives, manila folders. One labeled East River 2016-2020. Another, Redirection Strategy, EV Suppression. Suppression. That word hit different, like I was a mistake she'd been trying to edit out of the narrative. I took photos of everything, backed up the drives, labeled each folder in my own hand. This time, I was the one organizing the legacy. By the time I met Jasper the next morning, I hadn't slept, but I'd never felt more awake. He took one look at my face and didn't bother with a hello. "What did you find?" I slid the box across the table. Proof, names, transaction trails, and a strategy file. He flipped through it, slow at first, then faster. His eyes narrowed. "She wasn't just stealing," he muttered. "She was building something, a shadow system." I nodded. "And tying it to my name." We moved fast. The apartment became our command center, monitors everywhere, post-it notes on every surface. Jasper's code filled the air like music, quiet, erratic, brilliant. He rewired my app from scratch, adding a trace engine that could dig through anonymized shell layers and expose endpoint identities. It pulsed with every keystroke. One afternoon, he looked up and said, "You should name this thing." I hesitated. "Call it Anchor," I said, "because if she's trying to drown me, this is what'll hold me in place." He smiled faintly. "Dark. I like it." Each time Anchor pinged a match, we cross-checked it with the storage unit docs. The data wasn't just overlapping, it was syncing. Real estate deals, offshore shells, political donations in my name. It was worse than I imagined. And that's when we got the message. Jasper's screen blinked. Then a new tab opened, unauthorized. One line of text appeared in the middle of the screen. "Back off, or you'll lose more than money." I felt my blood run cold. Jasper killed the connection instantly. "That wasn't from her," he said, "at least not directly. This was routed through 4 international nodes. Whoever sent this knows what they're doing." I swallowed. Then we're getting close. That night, I lay awake, listening to the rain hit the window like static. My thoughts churned. There's a moment when fear turns into something sharper, more focused, not rage, not recklessness, but resolve. She was watching, threatening, circling, but so was I. The next morning, we built Anchor's auto scraper, an engine that would crawl financial networks tied to known aliases, flag anomalies, and feed them into a live dashboard. It was sleek, aggressive, mine. At 3:12 p.m., it found something. Mosaic Development Group, one of Mom's companies, hidden inside a chain of dummy LLCs, and it had just moved $2.1 million into a property trust in the name of EM Holdings. "EM," I whispered. "Event Mosaic." Jasper leaned over my shoulder. "This is the nerve center. If we can break this open, we prove everything." But the moment felt too still. The silence in the room shifted. My phone buzzed. Another message. No number, just one image. A photo of me, taken from outside my apartment. And beside me, Jasper. Head down, working. I looked up. He was already pulling the blinds. "They're watching us," I said. "They've been watching us," he replied. "Now they want us to know it." The tension pulsed between us. "Do we stop?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, we double down." I walked to the window. Rain traced slow trails down the glass. The reflection stared back at me, tired, haunted, alive. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was war, and war demanded allies. We weren't alone. Not yet. But we were exposed. The photo still sat on my desk. Me and Jasper, frozen mid-code, caught in the amber glow of my apartment lamp. Someone had been close enough to see us, to zoom in, to frame the shot like they were documenting prey. I turned it over, blank. No smudges, no fingerprints, just fear. And a question. Who the hell was watching me? That night I barely moved. I left the lights off, closed the blinds, sat curled on the couch, knees pulled to my chest, one hand wrapped tight around the pepper spray I kept tucked in my purse. Every little sound made me flinch. Pipes groaning, a branch scraping the balcony rail, the low hum of the fridge. Then came the flash. Not loud, not flashy, just a tiny strobe of light through the slats of the blinds, then gone. A camera. I moved slowly, every muscle screaming, peeked through a crack. There, across the street, just behind the fence, was a figure, still, watching. I couldn't make out a face, just the silhouette. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. They were waiting. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I drove across town to Jasper's studio. We didn't say anything at first, just exchanged exhausted nods and sat down like survivors in a bunker. "I was watched last night," I said, "outside my building." Jasper's fingers froze mid-keystroke. "You see who it was?" "No, but they were close." He cursed under his breath and spun his monitor toward me. "Then you should see this." He pulled up a screenshot, an email sent to a dummy address we used to route anchor activity. The subject line was blank. The body just said, "Stop digging. He's not who you think." Below it, an attachment, a photo of my grandfather, and behind him, in the corner of the frame, barely visible, that same man from the envelope photo. Older now, sharper jaw, same calculating eyes. "I think that's the same guy," Jasper said, "which means he's been around a long time." I nodded, blood pounding. "He's not just connected to Mom," I whispered. "He's been part of this since before I was born." We worked in near silence for hours. Anchor kept feeding us data, property shifts, digital breadcrumb trails, overlapping shell company names that now rang too familiar. And then, just after sundown, Jasper stood abruptly. "We need to talk somewhere else," he said. "Why?" He turned his laptop so I could see. There was a live feed running, of us, right there, in his studio, camera angle from the upper corner. Like a surveillance unit had been embedded in the room. "I didn't install that," he said. "Someone's tapped my system." My spine turned to ice. We left everything behind, shut down the servers, grabbed only what we needed, 3 flash drives and the phone we used for encrypted comms. We didn't go back to my place or his. We drove. No GPS, no Wi-Fi, and ended up in an old co-working loft a friend of Jasper's had left vacant during a sabbatical. Dusty, sparse, perfect. I looked at Jasper in the blue light of the street lamp pouring through the dirty window. His eyes were bloodshot, jaw clenched, the air between us tight with questions neither of us could name yet. "Do you trust me?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Yes." It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. And that was the first moment I realized this wasn't just about code or money or even revenge. This was about control, about someone shaping my entire life from the shadows. And now that I was pulling back the curtain, they were coming for me. That night, as Jasper configured a new offline dev rig, I curled up on the beat-up futon in the back room and let myself drift for the first time in days. I dreamed I was standing in our old backyard, the garden, the swing Dad built, my mother's voice calling me in for lemonade, except the swing was missing, and there was a man standing in its place, smiling like he knew me, but I didn't know him. I woke with a start. Jasper stood in the doorway holding a fresh printout. "I think we found him." I rubbed my eyes and sat up. The man from the photos, from the dream. "Name's Anthony Braddock," Jasper said. "Retired real estate broker, known alias on a few of the companies tied to the Varnell Fund." "And the photo with my grandfather?" Jasper nodded. "Same Braddock. According to public filings, they started a joint venture in the 90s, quietly dissolved after your grandfather died. Then Margot took over, with Braddock still lurking in the background." A chill rippled down my spine. "He's not just her partner," I said. "He's her architect." Jasper blinked. "Of what?" "Of all of this." A buzz from the hallway broke our silence, a soft footstep, then another. We both froze. I slipped to the wall and peered out. Nothing. Until a single envelope slid under the door. I crept forward, heart pounding, and picked it up, typed, crisp, sealed with wax. Inside, one line. "Your next mistake will be your last." And beneath it, a printed photo of Jasper sleeping, taken last night. I stared at the photo in my hand. Jasper asleep, unaware, peaceful, and someone, somewhere, was standing close enough to capture it. Framing the moment like a predator might frame prey before the final move. The envelope lay open on the table, its words burning into my skull. "Your next mistake will be your last." But I didn't get the chance to respond, not even to breathe, because 15 minutes later the building shook with fists pounding against the front door. "Police, open up!" Jasper and I locked eyes. He stood first, calm but pale. He mouthed the word, "Run." I moved, instinct, not logic. Grabbed my backpack, flash drive inside, yanked open the back door to the alley, heart racing so loud it blurred every other sound. Footsteps thundered inside. A crash. Someone shouting, "Clear!" Then, "Where is she?" I sprinted. The air outside was thick with mist, the kind Portland specializes in, just enough to blur your vision, never enough to hide you. My shoes slapped against the pavement, too loud, too human. Around the corner, into traffic. Horns blared. Behind me, sirens. I ducked into a stairwell, crouching behind a dumpster slick with rain and old oil. My breath tore out in sharp bursts. My fingers trembled. A cop car rolled by slowly, lights off, silent, then another. Whoever filed that report hadn't just tipped them off. They'd made it official. I was now the criminal. 30 minutes later, I was at the edge of the industrial district, hiding behind a freight container, trying to get a signal. Jasper's burner line didn't answer. I texted him, "Are you safe?" Nothing. Then, "They framed me. Hacking. What's happening?" Still nothing. I cursed under my breath, punched the metal wall. My knuckles split open. Blood smeared across my palm. All I could see was that image of Jasper, sleeping, vulnerable, and now they had him. I ducked into a gas station bathroom and peeled off my jacket, threw it in the trash, washed the blood off my hands and pulled my hoodie low. Then I stared into the mirror. I looked like a ghost of myself. Sunken eyes, cracked lips, hair sticking to my face with sweat. But inside was fire. If they thought they'd broken me with one raid, they hadn't learned anything yet. I found an old friend 2 neighborhoods over, Dylan, a former dev who owed Jasper a favor. He let me crash in his basement, no questions asked. "Jasper's in the wind," he told me, eyes flicking to the dark windows. "But not dead. I checked hospital logs. No match. He's smart. He'll lie low." "And the cops?" I asked. He hesitated. "They're painting you as a rogue hacker. Leaked financial data. Breach of contract, internal fraud. It's bad, Elyse." I sat down hard on the old futon. My legs finally gave. "Mom's behind it," I said. Dylan didn't argue. "Someone's feeding them documents, signatures, timestamps. Your app code's been rebranded under her company. They're saying you stole it." I almost laughed. "Let me guess. There's even a trail of emails to prove it?" He nodded slowly. "She's good," I whispered. "No," Dylan said. "She's ruthless." That night, I cracked open the backup drive from the storage unit. I scoured every folder, every zip file, looking for something, anything that could flip the narrative. And there, buried in an old archive labeled Braddock Security, was a set of internal memos. I scanned the PDFs, one after another, names, dates, surveillance protocols, payout records, and then my name, beside a line that read, "Designated Asset, Phase 2 Interference Protocol, Activate PR Discreditation Strategy." They hadn't just planned to ruin me. They had a full playbook for it. A digital smear campaign, press releases, fake LinkedIn articles, screenshots edited to show fake messages, even a dummy interview with a fabricated whistleblower. I covered my mouth, bile rising in my throat. She didn't just want to shut me down, she wanted to erase me. I forwarded the files to 3 secure backup servers. Then I wrote an email, no name, no greeting, just one line. "If you try to bury me, make sure you don't leave a shovel in my hands." And I sent it. To her. The next morning, the news broke. Local tech blog, "Daughter of Varnell Holdings accused of breaching mother's corporate firewall in alleged family tech scandal." My photo, grainy and unflattering, under the headline. I stared at the screen, hands shaking, and then my burner lit up. A message. Unknown sender. "Meet me tonight, 9:15, train station, level 3. Come alone." I showed it to Dylan. He frowned. "Could be a trap." "Probably is," I said. "But what if it's Jasper? Or Braddock?" I stuffed the drive into my coat. "Either way," I said, "someone wants to be found." The train station was nearly empty. Level 3 was lit by dim fluorescence, flickering in rhythm with the hum of faraway tracks. Cold concrete echoed under my boots as I walked, every step an argument between courage and common sense. I kept my hands in my pockets. One held the flash drive, the other, my phone, recording. At 9:15 on the dot, someone stepped out of the shadows. Not Jasper, not Braddock, but a woman, mid-30s, sharp blazer, Converse sneakers. She raised her hands. "Don't panic, Jasper sent me." I froze. "Prove it," she smiled. "He said to tell you anchor was always your word. He just helped sharpen the anchor points." My breath caught. That was him. I lowered my shoulders, tension bleeding out slowly. "Who are you?" "Call me Rhea," she said. "I'm part of a dev collective Jasper used to work with. We don't have offices, just safe zones. And he's alive." "Where is he?" "Hiding, for now, but he wanted me to find you." She handed me a slip of paper, a private address, a location outside Portland city limits. "Come tomorrow at noon," she said, "but bring everything, whatever you've got." Then she looked me straight in the eyes. "And come alone." The next morning, I left before dawn. The house was a cabin-style safe house tucked behind pine trees, half swallowed by mist. Wooden siding, solar panels, a security drone buzzing quietly above the porch. I knocked twice, waited. Jasper opened the door. He looked rough, beard growing in, bags under his eyes, but alive. I didn't speak, just stepped forward and hugged him. He hugged back. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I'm here." Inside, the living room had been converted into a makeshift command center. 3 laptops, a coffee-stained whiteboard, a wall of red thread, and printed screenshots like a crime drama come to life. "We've got a shot," Jasper said, "but it's going to take a team." Rhea appeared behind him, followed by 2 others, Dom and Lex, coders, analysts, real ones. For the next 10 hours, we worked like adrenaline addicts. They built a new instance of Anchor from scratch, clean, fast, distributed across nodes so it couldn't be shut down. Rhea tapped into secure whistleblower platforms. Lex created an auto-scraper that cross-referenced media accounts to track coordinated narrative shifts. Dom rerouted our IP trails, masking our digital footprint behind environmental charities and outdated NASA servers. And me? I sifted through the Varnell records, one after another, until I found the trigger. A clause hidden in the founding documents of Event Mosaic. If the company's founder was found guilty of felony-level fraud, all beneficiary accounts tied to that trust would be released, unrestricted, including mine. "She's not just protecting her empire," I murmured. "She's protecting access. If she goes down, she loses the vault." Jasper looked up from his laptop. "Then let's make sure she goes down." Rhea glanced up. "I've seeded the whistleblower drops. The files are staged and time-stamped. As soon as you give the word, it all goes public. Not just to press, to law enforcement, to nonprofit monitors, to every contact Mom had buried with black-tie galas and quiet threats." Then Jasper's screen pinged. He clicked it. Froze. Elyse?" I leaned over. It was a voice message, encrypted, but I recognized it instantly. My mother. Her voice, low, deliberate, filling the room like poison. "You don't know what you're doing. This isn't about money. It never was. You're trying to blow up something you don't even understand. Think very carefully about your next move, darling. Because once you do, there's no going back." Silence. Jasper turned to me. "She knows we're ready." I nodded. "She's scared." But part of me hesitated. What if she was right? What if I'd missed something? My fingers clenched the edge of the desk. Then came the twist. Lex pulled up an asset folder Mom had buried deep in a shell company, B&C Holdings. Inside, a contract, a non-disclosure agreement between Event Mosaic and Anthony Braddock. But the signature wasn't his. It was mine, dated 6 months ago. I stared at it. "That's fake," I whispered. "I never signed this." Lex frowned. "It's deepfake authenticated. Advanced forgery. It would pass basic legal scans." My throat went dry. "She's prepping for a takedown strategy," Jasper said. "She's going to accuse you of violating an NDA you never even saw." "If this goes public," I murmured, "she'll sue me for sabotage, probably try to spin the whole thing as blackmail." And yet, I looked at the drive in my hand, at the mountain of files we'd compiled, the algorithms we'd built, the truths we'd uncovered. I wasn't running anymore. I was standing. "She can spin," I said, "but the data doesn't lie." I pressed send. The upload triggered. One by one, the leaks hit. News outlets, watchdogs, regulators. Anchor hummed, alive with activity. Dom raised his eyebrows. "It's happening." I turned back to the whiteboard. All the strings now led to one core hub. EM Holdings. Everything pointed there. "Then that's where we go next," I said. But before I could say another word, Rhea's phone buzzed. She answered, went pale, then hung up. "Guys, someone just broke into our backup server vault." We all froze. And then the power cut out. The room went black. Not a flicker, not a glitch, just full immediate darkness, the kind that sucks the air from your lungs and silences thought. We all froze. The only sound was the sudden stop of Anchor's servers, mid-process, mid-broadcast, mid-war. I reached out blindly. "Jasper?" "Here," his voice said. "I've got a flashlight." A soft beam flickered to life, cutting through the dark like a surgical blade. We stood in a loose circle, eyes wide, breath visible in the sudden chill. I hadn't realized how much the hum of machines had become our heartbeat. Without it, everything felt exposed. "Backup server breach," Rhea whispered. "This wasn't random." Lex was already tapping at his tablet, working off stored charge. "No sign of structural damage. This was clean. Precision blackout." "Someone killed the grid," Dom added. "From inside." Jasper was silent for a beat, then said what we were all thinking. "She found us." I clenched my fists. My pulse was electric, hot, and sharp. "She knew exactly where to hit," I said. "The core, our traction point." Rhea looked at me. "Then we hit back harder." Lex connected to a backup router. "We've got limited bandwidth, but enough to run diagnostics. And Anchor stored a snapshot copy 2 hours ago before the surge." "Meaning?" I asked. "Meaning," Jasper said, "if we want to strike, we have to do it now." I nodded. "Then we pull the last thread." We powered up the secured rig. Anchor's heartbeat returned, faint, flickering, but alive. Dom tapped the final unlock script. "Last partition is decrypting now. If this works, we'll see the full architecture. Shell companies, fund recipients, laundering chains, surveillance payments, all of it." The percentage bar crawled across the screen slower than molasses in January. 20%, 37%, 52%. My nails dug into my palms. At 87%, the screen flashed once, then locked. A single line appeared. "Access blocked. Live override in progress." Jasper swore under his breath. "She's in the system." "Not just in," Lex said. "She's hijacking it." The screen shifted again. A live feed loaded, and then her face. Margot. Elegant, unbothered, wearing the same coral lipstick she wore the day she smiled while stealing my life. But her smile wasn't soft this time. It was weaponized. "Hello, darling," she said. My throat tightened. She leaned forward, chin resting lightly on folded fingers. "I warned you. This is what happens when you overstep." Rhea stepped toward the screen. "She's bouncing off a cloaked node. We can't trace her direct IP." Margot's voice cut back in. "It was never about the app, Elyse. Not really. It was about what you represent. An uncontrollable variable. A fracture in the machine I built." "You mean a human being?" I said. "One you stole from, lied to, used." Her laugh was dry. "Sweetheart, that's called parenting. You think you're the only child with scars? You forged my name. You built your empire on my inheritance." "You think it was your inheritance?" she snapped. "Everything you had was given, curated, protected, crafted by me." The mask cracked. Just for a moment. That was the real Margot, not a mother, a monarch. "You always underestimated me," I said. "And you thought your secrets were safe." She raised an eyebrow. "They were." I looked to Jasper. He nodded, just once. I stepped forward, voice steady. "Then explain why I have a full mirrored tree of EM holdings, with Braddock's signatures, payout logs, surveillance payments, NDA forgeries, all pointing to one account, yours." Her smile twitched. "Lies." I didn't blink. "Prove it." For the first time, she hesitated. Anchor beeped, decryption complete. The dashboard unfolded like a map of rot. Circles and lines, companies and code names, each one snapping into focus as Lex filtered them by relevance. And at the center, Varnell Legacy Reserve Trust Beneficiary, E. Varnell Primary Controller, M. Varnell Laundering, start date 2006. Jasper turned the monitor toward the screen. Her eyes narrowed. "You don't have the full key," she said. "Don't need it," I replied. "The pattern proves itself, and now the world's watching." Her lips parted, then closed. The connection cut. The screen blinked back to code, and then, banging. The warehouse door shook under a hard knock. We all jumped. "Stay here," I told the others, and moved slowly toward the metal roll-up, heart thudding like a war drum. Another bang, louder, then a voice, one I hadn't heard in weeks. "Elyse, open up." It was my father. I opened the warehouse door. Dad stood there soaked in rain, his tie half askew like it had finally surrendered to the storm. "I know where she's going," he said. We brought him inside. He didn't flinch at the server rigs or the red thread wall. He just walked to the table and set down an old leather portfolio. Inside, original deeds, tax records, personal notes. One document stood out, a transfer order from the Varnell Legacy Fund to a Swiss account, dated yesterday. "She's liquidating everything," Dad said. "She knows you're too close. She's fleeing." Jasper pulled up the tracker. Anchor's final node pinged, an offshore routing code linked to EM Holdings, set to execute in under an hour. "She's dumping the vault," Lex muttered. Rhea leaned in. "We cut that wire. She's paralyzed." Dad looked at me. "She'll know it came from you." "I want her to know." We traced the payment route through 7 proxies. Anchor decrypted the last loop. The final account was registered under her mother's maiden name. "She's running Legacy in reverse," I whispered, circling back to where it started. I clicked into the shell. 2 more passwords, final gate. Then Jasper looked at me. "It's your name on the trust. Your credentials started this." My fingers hovered over the keys. The phrase came to me, clear, steady. Nothing began with a punch. It began with whispers and a locked red door. I typed, "Red door." The screen opened. Millions, spreadsheets, transaction trails, donor lists, surveillance payments, even contracts with Braddock, binding him to silence through threat and payout. Jasper whistled. "This is it, her empire." I didn't hesitate. I hit send. Anchor deployed the leak. Every journalist, watchdog, and law enforcement agency in our loop received it. Live, traceable, authenticated. It was no longer ours. It was public. Minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance. We stepped outside. 2 SUVs pulled up, then a third. From the second vehicle, Margot. Still elegant, still composed. But something in her posture had shifted. She didn't walk out. She was escorted, cuffed. She spotted me. Didn't flinch. Just looked. Straight through me. "You'll regret this," she said, calm as always. "You've destroyed your own name." "No," I said. "I reclaimed it." She was loaded into the cruiser. Dad stood beside me, silent. Jasper watched from the doorway, arms folded. The officers retrieved hard drives. Evidence. They didn't ask us questions. Not yet. The data had already spoken. Later, I stood alone on the warehouse rooftop, watching clouds split over the Willamette River. I thought I'd feel triumph, but all I felt was air, space where pain had lived. She was gone. But so was the version of me who waited to be believed. I wasn't her anymore. I was me. Months passed. The headlines ran wild. Heiress exposes billion-dollar family fraud ring, from betrayed daughter to digital vigilante. I didn't give interviews, but I gave Anchor away, for free. Open source, public-facing. People downloaded it in droves, used it to trace fraud, expose corruption, reclaim stolen worth. It became more than a tool. It became a warning. And Jasper? Still here, still brilliant, still building beside me. Rhea and the others spun off their own venture, watchdogs with keyboards, carving space where silence once reigned. Dad? He retired early. We talk more now, still fractured, still awkward, but real. He asked once if I forgave him. I told him forgiveness is slow, earned, not assumed. He nodded like he understood. As for Mom, she was convicted. Wire fraud, conspiracy, corporate espionage, no appeals. Her final words in court? She was never supposed to outgrow the blueprint, but I did. Because survival isn't just staying alive, it's refusing to stay silent. The lesson? Never let someone convince you that your instincts are noise, that your boundaries are unreasonable, that your version of the story doesn't count. Because the truth? Gaslight enough wires and sooner or later, something sparks. Thanks for walking through this story with me. If it resonated, tap like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's felt silence too. Drop a comment with your own story, or stay tuned for the next tale of truth that couldn't be buried.